to talk about an area that has had some volatility and a big recent move, and that is Bitcoin. In fact, right now, Bill Baruch is with us, president at Blueline Futures, to talk all about this big move. Yesterday, 7%. Today, 4-5%. We're seeing 44,000. It's pretty amazing to see these moves now, right? What's capturing your mind as you see this move? What does it mean to folks?
Listen, I think there's been, just a real bludgeoning over the recent couple months. And I mean, at first case here, you got some buy the dip. Okay, that's come in, that's defended the lows. I think constructively, Bitcoin and ETH have as well held that was a that January low, and that was coming off from this November highs, held that January low. Solana took it out, but I think there's been some constructive with the two big ones in order to hold that. And then obviously you got the tailwinds. I mean, people are talking about people needing to get money out of Russia due to the sanctions, the SWIFT coordinations. I think there's a number of tailwinds due to that, and that's encouraged some buying. But listen, I wouldn't get away from the fact that we've seen the odds for the Fed to hike in March have completely priced out a 50 basis point hike. We're looking at 25 basis points. Yeah. We're looking at potentially peak hawkishness from the Fed in January. And now it's really something like a 60% chance we see only 5 hikes this year through December. So it's not a coincidence that we've seen the crypto market also respond. It's another reason why I've been going back to end of last week, was sort of rotating a little bit back into tech. I've been using the cash that I had on the sidelines to buy tech stocks.
I think, and we're seeing tech as the best of the bunch. It's the least bad today as the 10-year bond yield moves to 1.7%, right? A 5-week low. I love this conversation because people love Bitcoin. They love to have crypto in their diversified portfolio. We saw it at 69,000. People were hollering for 100,000, 150,000. Instead, they got under 40,000, not what they thought about. So I think there is some of that buy the dip mentality. It's also now turning out to be, is it a safe haven of some sort? Is it something different, a different way to park some money that doesn't seem, I don't know. You talked about the sanctions. Are people pulling money out and going into Bitcoin? Is there some underlying story here?
Listen, look at gold. And gold has been around for centuries, all right? And we're still, from year to year, understanding the narratives, whether it's Fed, whether it's geopolitics, and what's going to drive gold. You look back to U.S. and China trade war, and gold sold off. We're still developing the narratives that are going to push gold from year to year. Bitcoin is in its infancy, so we're still really trying to understand what's going to drive it. Is it a store of value? I mean, it's shown us at times it's certainly not a store of value, but for the safe haven, you are seeing as the world is developing and in this conflict is unfolding, there is reason to believe Bitcoin has real value in helping bring these type of capabilities in the movement of money and people being able to control their money outside of banks. So yeah, this has become a tailwind for Bitcoin and crypto in general here.
It's hard to know whether this is a short-term spike or the beginning of a long-term trend. I mean, I know generally you're a fan of Bitcoin, right? I mean, you think that it's something that you should own in a portfolio. I mean, particularly for younger folks, right? I mean, I would ask 2 questions here. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Bill. Is first, if you're young, should you be piling into crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or Ether or Solana, as you were talking about? And 2, this spike that we're seeing, is it temporary? How do we know?
Well, I would, to answer your first question, piling in is not the term I'd like to use, but understanding an allocation in that proper allocation. Not and that the same allocation is not going to work for every single person. But if you're young, there's definitely reason to have an exposure to crypto in your portfolio, and we help people do that. I mean, on our futures side, in the accounts that I'm managing, I have 2 micro Bitcoin per $100,000, basically just in the account. I've been rolling those into futures contracts. The CME has great micro liquidity in those, and I think that's a great way to gain exposure if you're not familiar with something like Coinbase and some of the other avenues. But yeah, I do think it has a place in your portfolio. Again, your risk tolerance and your your overall need within the portfolio definitely matters. So it's per case by case basis. Now, your second question, is this a real move? Is there staying power in this rally? First, we got to get above the breaking point. That breaking point, I'm looking at the chart right now, 47,000 in Bitcoin, where we really started selling off at the start of this year. If we can get back above there, well, I would like to term that as neutralizing the damage, and then we can begin repairing and heading higher. So I'm looking at 47,000 in Bitcoin. I'm looking at a similar area in Ethereum or Ether that has it got back to 3,200 already in February before retreating again. Closing out, getting out above 3,200 would be a big level, as well as 3,200 to about 3,500 is the halfway retracement in Ether. So getting out above those levels would tell us some staying power. And again, we did not take out those January lows. I think that's a big thing as this market has worked through this correction. Now, Solana did take out very briefly that low. One thing I'm liking with Solana is it had a breakout. It was in August. Yeah, in that breakout area, we've been holding out above that at $80, and so I think that's constructive. Even though we made a new low in February, I like Solana. I think that is where the returns can. I think that's going to be a leader in gains, percentage gains, on the next move.
Right, right. You know, I'm so glad you're bringing us, the multiple ways that you get this exposure. And then it can be expanded even further out, right? When you look, you mentioned Coinbase, and then there's other things, right? There's Dogecoin, there's MicroStrategy, there's Square. I mean, when people have conversations with you at cocktail parties and they say, what's the best way to get in or out, or how should I do this? What do you tell them?
There's no necessarily wrong way to do it. I mean, I think the main thing to understand is to not chase, and you can't chase price action. You can't succumb to FOMO. You spoke of Square. Square is something that we've used this massive weakness in the recent weeks to be nibbling in and building a position in on my wealth management side. I like Square. It had, obviously we had a big surge last week and on the heels of earnings, and I think that this overall, there's a number of ways to gain exposure. There's no wrong way to do it, but at the end of the day, you cannot chase around, and you have to know your spots and know your levels. And then when you're talking about a market like crypto, know your risk limits too. Know how much you want to risk before you get into the trade, because if you don't know that, then you're likely going to exit, at the worst possible times too.
Right. You don't want to be doing it with emotion. You have to have a plan. Like you said, with your wealth management team, I'm sure you work very carefully where to get in, where to get out, how to do it. It's so great to talk with you. I'm so glad you were available today, because this Bitcoin move that we've seen, obviously a big deal yesterday and today. Bill Baruch, a president at Blueline Futures, thank you very, very much for being on with us today. Glad you were able to be on with us. Thanks.